Howdy! Today on Citric Shop, I want to show you how to install and remove the backhoe off of your RK24. Assuming you've already removed the pin to allow your boom arm to swing side to side, forward to back, just out of the middle here, the only two retaining pins you have from this backhoe to the machine are these two main ones up top. Those pin locations are here, just behind this, and one matching it on the other side here. Here's a close-up of this pin, and just by design, this pin will only allow you to install it from the inside, the middle of the tractor, to the outside. With the hook arm on this pin, you won't be able to install it this outside to inside. So, as I said, once you have this retaining pin moved, which you would have removed anyway for your normal function of the backhoe, the concept is using the hydraulic power off of the implement itself to do the work for you, to install and remove. There are two hooks underneath of the backhoe that correspond with two rods that are attached to the frame of the tractor that this thing is going to pivot on and off of with the power of the hydraulics. So step one being to remove the two retaining pins from the backhoe implement that pin it to the tractor. To do that, you have to run the hydraulics, get this backhoe sitting on a 3-point foot system. So now that the tractor is on 3 legs, I just have to take enough tension off of these pins to where I can remove them. So I'm going to pull the pin out, set it aside, and I'll pull the other pin out, set it aside, and as long as I've set these feet out to where there's enough weight off of this backhoe, I should be able to pull these pins out no problem. This one slides out. Here's what that pin looks like. One handle on the other side and a hole for the retaining pin. This other one has a little bit of weight on it, but nothing that I can't wiggle out of here. There's step one. Second pin's removed. Now the only thing attaching this implement now to your RK24 is the hooks on the bottom, which I'll show you here in a minute, and the actual hydraulic lines. So once I lift up and move those hooks off the bottom of the tractor, I'll be able to slowly, very slowly, pull away from my implement. And you'll see the only thing holding me on anymore is 3 hydraulic connections to the backhoe. Now while I have it like this, I wanted to clarify a couple of things, because this is a lower angle, you can see everything that I'm talking about. Here is that hook that is on the backhoe here that is going to correspond with a rod mounting onto the back of the tractor just behind the wheels. You have a really good view of it turning around in the driver's seat, looking straight down. You can see that rod on your tractor. The other thing, these are the arms that lift your 3-point hitch stabilizers. Once you unpin the arms that just mount to the backhoe, pin them onto here, you'll pin them down here. This is what lifts them up and down. For this pin, what I was saying about it is, here's the holes in the frame of the back of the tractor here that you're pinning to. It pins through 2 separate holes on the backhoe that go on either side of the main frame hole in the tractor. With that arm, you'll notice if you take it off and on a couple of times that you cannot put it on this direction. The way you'd have to get it angled and sledgehammered into place just is a dead indicator you're doing it wrong. Has to go from the inside of the tractor to the outside of the tractor. Another thing is you have this retaining arm that only exists to hold your 3-point stabilizers out of the way for when you're backing up underneath your backhoe. They're not structural to holding the backhoe, they're simply just pinned up under the weight of the backhoe. The full weight of this implement is pivoted on the rods of the tractor and pinned into place on the top of this tractor. And that's what makes the big difference in buying a aftermarket backhoe for maybe an old tractor that you're trying to pin to your 3-point, and a tractor that's actually designed to have a backhoe implement attached to it. This has a subframe that allows for this 900+ pound implement to be used to dig holes 6.5 feet out from the rear of your PTO. Another thing that I like about this are these 3 hoses, different sizes, making it really simple for you to tell which one attaches to which. So this one being the large, but there's a male large on the tractor side. This one being a large, but it's a female large on the tractor side. The male large is on the implement side, so you can't mix those two apart. And then there's one a size smaller than the other two, female side on the tractor side, male on the implement side. So you cannot mix these 3 lines up. And these 3 lines, once disconnected with the tractor off, so you can disconnect these quick connects, can just hang out up here out of the way of your 3-point arm, and I'll demonstrate that here in a second. Once you're here in your tractor, you have the backhoe totally unconnected from the tractor. You just have your lines dangling. These are just simple disconnects. Pull those apart with the tractor off and no pressure on the hydraulics. This bottom plate comes out with 2 simple pins. Falls right out. You take this here, clip out of the way. You're going to save this pin because it's what you use for your stabilizer arm once you take it off the backhoe. You're going to slide that into position, take that pin there and this pin here, and either, depending on what you're doing, you're going to use the bottom or the top hole. For me and my implements, I'm using the bottom hole. Take your retaining pin and pin it right back in there. That's one side. You do the same thing on the other side. And there's the bottom 2 legs of your 3-point hitch with the stabilizers able to swing back and forth for you to mount up to your implement. The 3rd point hangs out here on top of the tractor, which is simple enough. Pull that retaining pin, pull the main pin out. It slides into the middle bolt holes atop your tractor. You pin it up and you pin it down. And then there is your 3-point for your tractor. Now you'll notice your tractor and your backhoe are totally separated. You have these 3 hoses kind of hanging out. Not only that, but you have the backhoe approximately 18 inches from touching the ground. Now if you're like me and you like storing your backhoe indoors out of the elements, you got to be careful about this thing possibly leaking hydraulics and it squatting or shifting in a way you didn't leave it. You didn't intend for it to be. So I have this one, it's pretty stable on the 3 legs, but if I were to set it all the way down, let out some of the pressure, minding where my toes are, that way I know it's going to be here when I get back. I've already set it down on the ground it cannot move any further. Keeping in mind that I didn't set this heavy implement on top of my hoses, making it nearly impossible to hook back up to the tractor to lift the implement off. Pull those to the side, above on top of the backhoe. That way you're not setting the weight of it on top of your hoses. Made that mistake once, and that was all it took. One of the reasons I say to do that is my dealership was talking about people taking these backhoes off, say inside their garage, and them not accounting for the backhoe potentially having a hydraulic leak, releasing these hydraulic cylinders that allow it to move around, and this backhoe slowly leans itself through your drywall. Now that you have your 3-point established, the only thing left to do on this is just to remove this retaining arm. That's just a retaining pin there, and then this pin pops right up. Big gold one on my tractor. This will then slide straight out, and you'll see it has a couple different adjustments. You set that out of the way, now you're able to pin up any implement to your 3-point. The only thing I recommend pinning to your 3-point is a quick hitch. Pinning and unpinning implements onto a 3-point with these adjustable turnbuckles is for the birds. All you have left to do is the hydraulic hoses on the tractor. 3 hoses, 2 different sizes, as I said before. You're going to take your large hose, main hose, and your large other hose, male and female, tractor off. You're going to pin these 2 together. Now you've just completed the loop for your tractor to lift the stabilizers on your 3-point hitch. These arms here. Now they can move up and down with your lever just right at the seat. This one, I just cap off with their little cap, and I store all of these up here out of the way of my implements. Also to be careful that it's out of the way of this pinch point betwixt the frame of the tractor and this arm when it lifts up. I've already had a little bit of rub on here where I wasn't as careful. So now I take some extra time, make sure these are pinned up out of the way. Let's say you're the other way and you already own the tractor and you were thinking about buying the backhoe attachment, or you bought the backhoe attachment after the fact, or it's been too long since you've taken it off and you forget exactly how it goes back onto the tractor. The first thing that I do is adjust the stabilizer arms so that they can flop about and install the retainer for the stabilizer arms. And I'll do that now. The reason I start with this is so when I hook up my hydraulic lines to relift my implement, I can swing these up, pin them out of the way, and now the tractor is able to back all the way up underneath your backhoe. That being said, the next step is to unhook your hydraulic lines off of your tractor, uncap that one, and hooking up your lines to your implement. So what I just did on camera a minute ago was show you to set this thing on the ground as to not injure yourself or your family. What I did without thinking was I showed you that after I'd already disconnected the hydraulic hoses. So once these are disconnected and you start moving these around, what you're doing is building up pressure in the implement. The only way to release that pressure to be able to hook these hoses back up is to trace these hoses back to their destinations. One hose is here, one hose is here, one hose is on this side right here. Break those loose, then you connect them up, snug these back up. So if you ever find it to where you can't hook these back up there, normally you can play around with the controls and release the pressure and you'll be able to hook these lines back up. Same thing on the tractor side. Maybe it's on this side that these hoses have some pressure not allowing you to push these quick connects back together. Interesting enough, first time I've had this inspection cover off here, the way that they're giving you a different size hose to make it simple enough for you to connect big hose, the big hose, big hose, the big hose, medium hose, is a simple adapter. This is the actual size hose for this going straight in the machine versus the 90, an adapter, a bigger hose to make it simple for you over here. That's a pretty simple solution if maybe you're working with your own hydraulics and you want to not have to mark either one, or just know off the top of your head. You can make it to where each hose is a different size, like how they did from the manufacturer. So, like a dummy, I've created additional work for myself, but now I'll put this inspection plate back on and we'll continue with the process. As I was saying, now that your hydraulic lines are hooked up from the implement to the tractor, the next step is to pin up your stabilizer arms from your 3-point hitch to your retaining arm. Always being mindful of where my feet are in relation with the implement and where my body is in relation to the space betwixt the tractor and the implement. I'm going to raise up the implement under its own hydraulic power, and now I'm going to pin my stabilizer arms up off the ground. Now, I'm going to match this hook to this top bar on the tractor. Slowly backing up, being really careful not to pinch my hoses. Also, you got to get your top link out of the way. Unpin that from the tractor, set it aside. It's just about me lining up a hook with the frame of the tractor, keeping the hoses up out of the way so they don't get damaged. I'm going to slowly lower this down, see how close I am. Ooh, I'm stuck. I'm stuck on this side, so let's try that again. You want to take this slow, because you pull off with your hydraulic hoses hooked, you're just going to be dragging your implement all over the place, damaging things. Nope, I missed it. Two things I want to point out why I just got the implement hooked back onto the tractor. That hook pins in right here. It's going to hook into the frame right there. And the other thing is you have the implement with the two holes that pin in the top trying to line up with the hole in the tractor up here. This hole right here where your retaining pin is going to slide through, locking this into place. What you're doing when you're backing up and going forward and trying to line this up is you have about a 2.5 inch gap of play where this can hook up to that bar potentially. You got this on the tractor trying to go betwixt the two sides of this retaining pin on the implement. So you're lining up two things simultaneously. I tried to give you an angle so you can see what I'm talking about finally with these pins. These pins are going to slide in here, but they're going through 3 separate holes. And a lot of times there's a lot of weight on these pins that you're going to try and finagle these in. I always do it from the driver's seat of the tractor. And now that I know that my stabilizer arms are free, that there's no weight on them, the only thing I have is the boom and the stick to push the whole implement, if you can imagine it, forward, backwards, and a little bit of this. Not very much of this, but just a little bit. Typically it's this forward and backward motion that's going to get you to slide these pins in where they need to be. So that one is the closest. Let me just see if I can make this better or worse. There, better and better. So now those are in. And if you're real talented, you might be able to sneak these in while you're in the seat. It's kind of annoying to do. There's that one. And that other retaining pin, you're going to sneak in, fix the frame and that bolt. There's 2. Now, you can feel the camera jostling because I got it hovering above the boom, but now everything is off the ground. Your tractor is fully adapted to the backhoe and vice versa. These hoses, like I said, you just want to pin up out of the way. I like to have them up out of the way because if you have them under out of the way, you could be dragging the ground, so you have to watch what your hoses are doing underneath of your backhoe implement as well. The last thing for this tractor is to put your stabilizer arms pinned up against the machine so you don't lose them. They put this convenient little area where you can slide the U shape of this onto the tractor on the bottom side, and then you pin the top just like you normally would. And the same thing for the other side. Also conveniently, your top link for your 3-point hitch hooks up here like your Henry rifle above the mantle of your fireplace. And just like that, you now have a backhoe either back on or back off of your RK24. Don't worry about this puddle here. That's not how much hydraulic fluid you would lose in the swapping off and on. That's just my truck losing antifreeze. So if you have any questions about installing or removing your backhoe, any questions about anything going on back here with your 3-point, any comments in general on this video, let me know. Till next time.